In terms of whom to screen, so all of us who deal with newborns who have just delivered in the hospital need to be aware of which babies need to be screened. So do not screen all the newborns. That means there is no test if there are no symptoms or no risk factors. This is because if you test unnecessarily, the physiologic nadir will be picked up and you'll end up treating the babies unnecessarily, either with introducing formula feed or separating the mother and the baby for treatment. If a baby is symptomatic, obviously you need to always check sugar, the ABC and glucose. So that approach is very important. Any symptomatic baby, always include glucose as part of your evaluation. And if the baby is at risk but is asymptomatic, you screen them. This includes infant of diabetic mother, small for gestational age or IUGR babies, large for gestational age babies, and late preterm babies. The typical symptoms related to hypoglycemia will be jitteriness, which is a tremulous baby, lethargy, poor feeding, which come with neuroglycopenia, and in premature babies or near-term babies, they can have apnea. When they stop breathing or they have seizures, cyanosis may be present, and the baby may not be able to regulate their temperature well, so hypothermia may be a presentation as well, and seizures can be one of the factors. So, what causes neonatal hypoglycemia? So, we have these risk groups, and according to the factor in each of these groups, the glucose may drop due to various reasons. So, in the preterm neonates and small for gestational age babies, they have lower glycogen and fat stores, and they possibly have, especially the IUGR babies, may have a higher insulin level as well. Infants born to diabetic mothers are exposed to high glucose concentrations in the womb and they have got used to producing higher insulin. So, after the placental supply stops, the insulin may continue to be on the higher side, and this may lead to a transient hyperinsulinism. And if the mother receives intravenous dextrose during delivery, or if the mother receives hypoglycemic agents, beta blockers, oral antidiabetics, these babies are at higher risk because of these medication impact. And of course, the condition of the baby after delivery, birth asphyxia, related perinatal stress, and sepsis and other conditions may include increased metabolic requirement, and they burn out their glycogen stores quickly. This leads to hypoglycemia as well. So, the American Academy of Pediatrics as well as the NNF guidelines bring out these risk factors which we discussed already. So, premature babies at 36 weeks and below, and small for gestational age and large for gestational age. The definition of large for gestational age ideally should be based on centile curves so that we don't include babies who are relatively mature and their weight groups. I mean, so arbitrarily having 3.8 or 4 kilo may overtreat babies who are 41, 42 weeks. So use the centile charts, and same applies for small for gestational age. So most of us may consider 2.5 kilo and below as a easy estimate, not to miss the small babies. So, in terms of checking the blood glucose, it's always important to remember that when we check the blood glucose, it's 15% lower than the plasma glucose because the red blood cells, the hematocrit, contributes to 40-50%, and that's going to impact on your blood glucose. So, when we do a bedside testing, you're actually testing the blood glucose. The lab testing is going to test the plasma glucose. So, the glucose oxidase method, which is done in the lab, is fairly reliable. The bedside testing always preferable to get it confirmed, but if the baby is symptomatic or it's significantly low, don't delay the treatment waiting for the lab result, but you send it at the same time to correlate. And many of the current glucometers have the reflectance correction, which makes it more reliable. And remember that the glucometers were made for adults with diabetes, so the lower range it's not going to read that accurately, and also the hypoglycemia range in babies is lower than the hypoglycemia range in the adults. So again, 60 and below was incidence. I mean the definition in older children and adults, but in newborns we go 45 milligrams and below, as we will see next. If the sample is not kept on ice, there may be a drop like 6 milligrams per hour by RBC glycolysis. And if you have a blood gas analyzer, the glucose measurement may be accurate, but look at the calibration at regular intervals as well. So, coming to the most important part of the talk, which is the timing of the screen and the duration of monitoring. So, the initial steps, we aim to feed the baby by 1 hour of age, preferably skin to skin care with the mother and breastfeeding. and the glucose is checked 30 minutes after the first feed. So suppose you feed the baby by 45 minutes, you wait 30 minutes after the first feed to do the first glucose, and subsequently you do pre-feed checks thereafter until stable. How long to monitor we will discuss next as well. So here, if the baby is infant of diabetic mother or large for gestational age, we stop monitoring by 12 hours if we have three normal pre-feed readings. In a small for gestational age or late preterm, we know that their stores are low, they may not feed as effectively, and so we continue monitoring for at least 24 hours. However, in my practice, I tend to skip to alternate feed monitoring after the first two or three normal readings. So we do 6 hourly checks after the initial two or three readings. If they are normal, we stop by 24 hours. If we have recurrent low values or overfeeding, then we continue longer according to clinical decision. And remember that the feeding support has to be adequate from the outset. I would suggest that where we anticipate the risk, like infant of diabetic mother or multiple pregnancy or IUGR, you start antenatal expression of colostrum and you already have a store and the mother's milk starts flowing quicker as well. So this is a flowchart from the American Academy guidelines, and you can either follow this or you can follow the NNF, which simplifies this part into one reading of less than 35 rather than 0 to 4 hours at less than 25, and 4 to 24 hours is less than 35. So the reason, uh, this is an algorithm which allows the time-based threshold, and this allows for the transition, the physiologic transition that we discussed. So the nadir happens in the first 4 hours, so we allow a lower reading. So if the initial screening was less than 25, you feed the infant and recheck the glucose in 1 hour. The subsequent screening, if it's less than 25, we have to go for IV glucose. If the next reading is 25 to 40, that it starts improving, then you refeed and IV glucose if it persists to be low. After 4 hours, you change the threshold to less than 35 milligrams. And if the first reading is less than 35, you feed and recheck. You can use a glucogel at this time. I'll discuss that next. And subsequent screening, if it's less than 35, you go for IV glucose and rising, but below 45, you refeed and check. After the first 24 hours, you go to less than 45 as a cutoff, but after 48 hours, your screening value goes to more than 60. So this is the standard cutoff of 45 or 2.6 millimoles that we use. And the first 24 hours, you have two scales, the 0 to 4 hours with less than 25 as a threshold, and the 4 to 24 hours with less than 35. So you have two groups. And of course, as the baby gets older, we cannot accept below 45, so we accept more than 60 as a normal range. Anything below 60 is abnormal. So again, we identify the baby based on the risk factors. You feed and you do the first sugar 30 minutes after the first feed. At 0 to 4 hours, you have a threshold of less than 25. You refeed a glucogel and recheck in 1 hour. After the 4 hour mark, you change the threshold to less than 35. If the baby is symptomatic at any time, I will come to that next as well. It's a different approach. And if the baby has persistent low sugar or the baby is symptomatic, we need IV dextrose. And the goal is a pre-feed more than 45 milligrams after the first 24 hours. If this is consistently there, or the threshold based on the age, you stop monitoring after 2 to 3 normal readings, by 12 hours in the LGA and infant of diabetic mothers, or by 24 hours in the IUGR and preterm babies. So this is again the stressing on the thresholds. So because I've already explained, I will not elaborate it. But 0 to 4 hours less than 25, feed and glucogel if it's lower, and if it persistently lower, give dextrose. Asymptomatic at-risk infant less than 35 at 4 to 24 hours, and more than 48 hours, more than 24 hours, or if the baby is symptomatic at any time, 45 is a threshold. So again, this summarizes what we discussed again. So begin feeding, initial screen, so the target we discussed, and according to the timing of discontinuation. So stop when 4 consecutive readings, including the post-gel screen, uh, according to this target. And if the baby has need for 3 oral glucose gels and it's still in the lower limit, you have to inform the caretaker for IV glucose. That is, the baby needs an ICU treatment. Here again, this chart is useful for you. The risk factors are discussed and the symptoms are mentioned. and oral glucose gel is mentioned as well. In the symptomatic baby, we should be treating it urgently because we know the baby already has symptoms, and the symptoms are non-specific as we discussed. So underlying factors need to be considered like sepsis. Uh, the baby should get IV glucose, so we shouldn't feed and recheck in the symptomatic baby. We ideally should get a plasma sample, but don't delay the treatment. IV glucose started and consider the differential diagnosis or additional factors which may lead to the sepsis. The initial bolus is given if the sugar is less than 20 usually, and you start with 2 ml per kilo. If the baby is asymptomatic, you don't need to give the bolus if it's more than 20. If the baby is symptomatic, you start with the bolus all the time. The glucose infusion rate, I will come to that next. It's commonly 4 to 6 milligram per kilogram per minute. Then you titrate upward if the sugar is low based on the repeat glucose values. You escalate stepwise by 2 milligram per kilo increment, and obviously a high GAR more than 8 to 10 milligram per kilo should raise suspicion of hyperinsulinism. And you consider central access if you need higher glucose concentration, because in the first 2 3 days you're limited in how much total fluid you will use. You usually don't exceed 100 to 120 ml per kilo, and if that volume with 12% dextrose is not adequate, you need a higher GAR than that, then you need to go for central line. Always anticipate and prepare so you don't delay. Symptomatic hypoglycemia should be treated with a bolus 200 milligram per kilogram, followed by IV infusion at 80 to 100 ml per kilo per day. And the bolus not required for asymptomatic hypoglycemia. Avoid the repeated bolus as it may trigger more insulin release. Maintain plasma glucose concentrations in symptomatic infants close to 50 milligrams. So you're not on the edge, so you have to be comfortable. And after 48 hours, you aim for 60 and above. If hypoglycemia is persistent after 30 to 60 minutes, infusion rates should be increased as needed to maintain the normoglycemia. So the maximum GAR is limited by the amount of fluid intake. You need to monitor the sugar sodium as well if you are giving a higher volume. If the GAR approaches 12 milligrams, other interventions including the workup should be done. A central venous catheter may be necessary to give adequate glucose concentrations. PIC line is preferable. UVC is an option as well. But the UVC position is important as you'll be giving concentrated glucose. In the setting of difficult IV access, 40% dextrose gel massaged into the buccal mucosa can be given, or IM glucagon. But remember that IUGR babies, glucagon doesn't work.